In a dimly lit KTV bar, an intense argument unfolded, and it was the protagonist, Jinsu Han, who found himself at the center of it all. Jinsu, a third-year student specializing in general surgery, couldn't bear to see his girlfriend, Soo-min, being inappropriately touched by a guy named Jingyu Kim. The situation escalated, and in a fit of anger, Jinsu punched Kim, causing him to stumble and fall onto a plush sofa. Little did Jinsu know that this impulsive action would set a chain of events into motion, changing the course of his life. The repercussions were swift and harsh. Kim, using his influence and connections, managed to get Jinsu fired from his job as a promising surgeon. Jinsu's hopes of finding another job were dashed due to his humble family background. He felt trapped in a nightmare, his dreams slipping through his fingers like sand. One fateful day, as Jinsu's life seemed to spiral further into despair, a glimmer of hope appeared. He crossed paths with an investor who offered him the opportunity to open a small private hospital. It felt like a lifeline in the tempest of his troubles. However, this beacon of hope was short-lived. The investor disappeared without a trace, leaving Jinsu with empty pockets and shattered dreams. A desperate trip to the police station unveiled a shocking revelation. The investor was none other than a close friend of Professor Kim. As if that wasn't enough, Jinsu's world came crashing down when Soo-min, his girlfriend, decided to end their relationship. It was a bitter blow, leaving him feeling utterly alone and defeated. He felt like his future had crumbled to dust, and he was determined to do whatever it took to make amends. With a heavy heart, Jinsu made a decision. He would swallow his pride and apologize to Professor Kim, hoping that redemption would pave the way for him to regain his career. As he turned the doorknob to Kim's room, anxiety gnawing at him, he was met with a sight that sent shockwaves through his entire being. There, with Professor Kim, was Soo-min, the love of his life. Betrayal cut deeper than any scalpel. Walking home that night, Jinsu felt like he was in a daze. The world seemed cruel and unforgiving. As he trudged along, a stranger approached him under the dim glow of streetlights. The stranger asked for directions, but then did something unimaginable. In a swift, treacherous move, he stabbed Jinsu with a strange Minecraft knife. The pain was excruciating, and darkness began to close in. In the depth of a dense forest, Jinsu's pleas for help fell on deaf ears as the stranger continued to converse with someone else nearby. With his life hanging by a thread, Jinsu overheard their conversation, and the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. It was Professor Kim, the man who had ruined his life, who had orchestrated this sinister plot. Just when hope seemed lost, Jinsu heard a mysterious voice whispering, "The spiritual eyes have opened." Suddenly, his vision was filled with a display showing his deeds, and he had amassed enough points through his good actions to claim a resurrection ticket with 1,000 points, or a ticket to heaven with just 100. Time was ticking, and he made a fateful choice: to isekai, to another world. The system promised to retain his memories as a doctor and find the perfect place for him to utilize his surgical skills. In a blinding flash of light, Jinsu found himself lying on the ground, his wounds miraculously healed. He had indeed isekai'd to another world, a place in the midst of a gruesome battlefield. As he absorbed the previous owner's memories, he realized he was in the tumultuous Three Kingdoms period. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. What is the best healer in Manhwa? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now, back to the recap. Surveying the wounded victims around him, Jinsu recognized a glaring problem. He lacked the proper surgical gloves and tools to perform the life-saving procedures needed. Just then, a man approached him, addressing him as young Master Huabu. It was Wang Sam, providing a glimmer of relief. Jinsu urgently requested clean water, needles, and thread, but more challenges lay ahead. Jinsu had no anesthesia or tools to monitor vital signs. He made a difficult choice and began a manual examination of the victim's injuries with his bare hands. His fingers traced the severity of the wound, discovering that the large intestine had been severed, and feces had potentially contaminated the abdominal cavity. It was a dire situation, and he needed to act swiftly to drain the stagnant blood. When Jinsu finally received a thick needle and thread, there was no other option but to use them to painstakingly stitch up the wound. A worried woman approached him, her eyes filled with fear for her husband. It was a critical moment, and Jinsu knew that he was their only hope. With a calm and reassuring tone, Han turned to the worried woman and spoke, "Don't worry, your husband will make it through. His wound isn't as severe as it looks." He continued his relentless efforts to save more victims, his determination unwavering, even though he couldn't save everyone. The weight of the lives he couldn't rescue only fueled his resolve to make a difference from that point on. After the harrowing incident, Sam Wang couldn't hide his relief, thinking that Master Huabu had survived. But Han knew the truth. Huabu's spirit now resided within this body. He pondered the likelihood of the bandits being stopped by the soldiers, but Sam Wang shattered his hope, revealing that rumors claimed the bandits had influence over officials through bribes. In this chaotic era, even this world was tainted by corruption and strife. Han couldn't help but blame the mysterious force that had transported him to this tumultuous timeline. Later that night, both men made it home safely. Huabu's brother met them with relief, grateful that Huabu was unharmed. Han couldn't help but worry about Huabu's mother, but he was relieved to hear that she had finally fallen asleep. He decided not to disturb her and retreated to his room, pondering where to begin on the morrow. The following morning, Han awoke to the realization that this new body was surprisingly agile. During breakfast with his brothers, he observed that their diet consisted primarily of vegetables, explaining their slender frames. Second brother suggested that Han should learn martial arts for self-defense, to which Han agreed, surprising his brothers with his willingness to embrace change. Later, they paid a visit to their ailing mother, and Han noticed her condition, suspecting it might be related to liver or gallbladder disease. Upon a careful examination, he diagnosed her with cholecystitis, but he knew that performing surgery to cure it was impossible in this era. Despite Han's medical knowledge, second brother remained skeptical, mocking him for merely reading a few medical books. However, news of Han's heroic efforts in saving several victims the previous day began to sway second brother's doubts, gradually earning his trust. Han realized that he possessed a unique ability, a reservoir of knowledge about herbal medicine from the previous owner of this body. He requested a prescription from the local physician, but unfortunately the herbal medicine could only boost vitality and would not cure their mother's ailment. Han explained to his brothers that their mother needed surgery, which involved making an incision in her abdomen. The revelation left both brothers in shock. Second brother thought Han was out of his mind, while first brother hesitated. Han, determined to save Huabu's mother, remained resolute, knowing that his knowledge and skills were their only hope. Han faced second brother's anger head-on, insisting that their mother's life hung in the balance. The tension escalated, and second brother slapped Han for what he saw as nonsense. Enraged, Han retaliated with a punch that left only a slight scratch on second brother's face. Tempers flared, and second brother prepared for another strike, but first brother intervened, reminding them of their mother's presence and the urgency of the situation. Their mother, still weak and unwell, chimed in, suggesting that they try Han's unconventional method, using cornbeard as a remedy instead of herbal medicine. Everyone reluctantly agreed, and they took their leave, with Han realizing that he needed the proper tools to perform the surgery. He couldn't bear to see his mother suffer any longer, knowing that complications could arise if they didn't address her condition promptly. Second brother, now regretful, apologized to Han and acknowledged that Han's punch had nearly landed. Han proposed a sparring match, with the winner getting their wish granted. They assumed fighting stances, and as the battle commenced, Han used his knowledge of boxing to throw a left-hand punch. However, second brother skillfully countered, kicking Han to the ground. Han got back on his feet and continued to fight back, but he kept getting outmatched by second brother. Realizing the futility of the fight, second brother decided to put an end to it and turned his thoughts to the surgery. Han, on the other hand, was deep in thought about his next steps. He needed a surgical scalpel and, most importantly, an anesthetic. No matter how he pondered it, he understood that there was no herbal medicine that could replace anesthesia, and he required a needle thinner than blood vessels. Additionally, he needed an assistant during the surgery, a task that seemed daunting in this era. To begin, Han decided to focus on acquiring the surgical scalpel, but he required money to obtain the necessary tools. He approached his first brother for an allowance and headed to the market in search of a medicine shop. Han requested poisonous weeds from the shop owner to create an anesthetic, but the owner had none in stock. They agreed to harvest the weeds for Han at a mutually acceptable price. Afterward, Han ventured into the suburbs of Kiao country, where the lower class and destitute gathered, including beggars and the homeless. Here, in the heart of poverty, he hoped to find a solution to his need for an assistant and other essential resources. As Han ventured through the area, his curiosity led him to a gathering of people huddled around a man in distress. The man had suffered a grievous injury, a jagged tear in his ligament and muscle, likely from a shattered bone. Han's compassionate gaze fell upon the wounded man, and he pondered if he could lend his aid, even without the modern surgical tools he was accustomed to. Kneeling beside the injured man, Han opened his first aid kit and swiftly applied bandages to staunch the bleeding, careful not to inflict any more pain. He then began a thorough examination of the leg, tracing his fingers gently over the damaged area. With concern etched on his face, he asked a nearby villager for ice water, fully aware that refrigeration was a luxury yet to exist in their time. While the victim's children rushed off to fetch the chilled water, a curious and unexpected sight unfolded. An ethereal screen, as translucent as an X-ray, materialized over the injured leg. Han's eyes widened in amazement as he observed the intricate details of the fracture. The mysterious screen vanished as swiftly as it had appeared. Determined to help, Han carefully aligned the broken bones, a task that brought the injured man immense pain, causing him to lose consciousness temporarily. The victim's child, wide-eyed and anxious, fretted for his father's well-being. Han, wearing a reassuring smile, gently reassured the child that his father was on the mend and soon ready for the stitches that would mend his torn flesh. The villagers, deeply impressed by Han's deft skills, hailed him as a divine doctor. Grateful for their appreciation, Han expressed his need for a multitude of rats for his medical experiments. In a heartfelt gesture, the victim's child offered to assist him at a modest price. Han graciously accepted their help and, with kindness, advised the child to cleanse the wound daily with hard alcohol and a clean, hot cloth. As the night descended, Han sought out a surgical knife, somewhat bulkier than the norm but sufficient for his temporary purposes. He ventured into the bustling entertainment district to purchase hard alcohol, where he found himself an inadvertent spectator to a distressing scene. A wealthy man berated a woman with harsh words, prompting the intervention of a nearby guard. Tempers flared, and the wealthy man's slap stoked the guard's anger. In an alarming turn, the wealthy man drew a sharp object and inflicted a minor wound upon the guard. Quick to react, the guard disarmed his assailant, showing impressive resolve. Han's eyes fell upon the guard's injury, recognizing its severity. Yet when offered assistance, the guard stoically declined and resumed his duties. Han procured the alcohol he required, hopeful of earning a discount through repeat purchases. However, as fate would have it, Han stumbled upon a dimly lit room where he encountered the injured guard once more, this time lying on a humble bed. Memories of the guard's earlier refusal gave Han pause, but to his surprise, the colleague mistook him for Physician Bong and extended a warm welcome. The guard soon realized his mistake, and in a display of humility, he knelt before Han, offering his heartfelt apologies. Touched by the guard's sincerity and motivated by the knowledge that a life hung in the balance, Han agreed to provide his expertise. Suddenly, Physician Bong, the genuine article, arrived on the scene. Bong carefully examined the wound and made a significant discovery. The facial vein had been severed. With practiced precision, he applied acupuncture to staunch the bleeding, captivating Han's attention. Observing Bong's deft needlework and his ability to manipulate the muscle to exert pressure on the blood vessel, Han recognized acupuncture as a remarkable medical art, one he yearned to learn and master. Bong, the skilled physician, instructed the guard to remove the acupuncture needle after 15 minutes, hopeful that the bleeding would cease. The guard, however, suggested leaving the needle in place. Bong sternly warned him of the dire consequences, blindness or speechlessness, should he ignore this crucial advice. Han watched this exchange, recognizing the limitations of acupuncture as a temporary measure, but he hesitated to intrude further into the matter, respecting the boundaries of others' affairs. Curious about Han's medical knowledge, Bong sought to learn more about his young acquaintance. Han revealed his status as a medical student, and upon assessing the grim odds of the guard's survival, he offered to attempt a more permanent solution, connecting the severed blood vessels. Bong, understanding the gravity of the situation, consented. With a needle threaded with fine silk in hand, Han began the intricate process of stitching the delicate vessels back together. The guard, racked with pain, cried out in agony. In an act of mercy, Bong applied a needle to the guard's neck, relieving some of his suffering. Han persevered, completing the meticulous stitching before instructing the guard to apply alcohol to the wound every morning and evening, with the thread to be removed after 2 weeks. Grateful for their help, the two guards expressed their thanks, although Bong held a grim conviction that the injured guard's fate remained uncertain. Emboldened by his newfound interest in acupuncture, Han approached Bong with a request for instruction. Bong agreed, on the condition that Han share his knowledge of connecting blood vessels and suturing the skin. Thus, an informal partnership was forged, built upon a mutual exchange of valuable medical expertise. As night descended, Han returned to his home, his clothes bearing the telltale stains of his efforts. His presence stirred concern among his brothers. His elder brother scolded him, admonishing him to prioritize his studies over his burgeoning interest in medicine. This criticism ignited Han's anger, but his second brother intervened with a different perspective. Recognizing Han's vulnerability in a world where he often ventured unarmed, his second brother decided to teach him swordsmanship. Han embraced this opportunity, eager to gain the skills necessary for self-defense. Their training commenced with a daring move as Han lunged at his second brother, but the latter effortlessly countered, piercing Han's heart with his swift strike. Surprised by the speed of the attack, Han regrouped and attempted a different approach, drawing from the fencing techniques of his own world. Although his second brother was taken aback by this unfamiliar stance, he still managed to deflect Han's thrust and topple him. Realizing his need for fundamental training, Han's brother fastened a rock to a tree branch and directed Han to practice stabbing it. However, he emphasized the importance of attacking from a specific angle, demonstrating the technique with agility and precision. Han, initially waiting for the stone to come to rest before striking, soon learned the wisdom of attacking while the target was still in motion, an invaluable lesson in the art of combat. Determined to adapt to the challenges of an era where danger lurked around every corner, Han accepted his brother's training regimen. The goal was set. Han needed to succeed 3 times out of 10 consecutive attempts to complete the day's training. He understood the gravity of his situation and the importance of honing his skills to survive. He was committed to becoming a doctor and enduring the rigorous training required. The following morning, Han awoke to newfound strength in his muscles, musing over whether it was a result of his mysterious resurrection. Bong treated him to a hearty meal, showcasing a needle that was crafted with astonishing precision. Curiosity piqued, Han inquired about the skilled smith behind such craftsmanship. Bong revealed that the needle hailed from Xiangcheng country. Han's eyes sparkled with hope as he contemplated the possibility of the same smith fashioning a Kelly needle holder and retractor, tools essential for stitching, blood vessel manipulation, and bone spreading. Bong, well versed in stitching techniques, demonstrated his expertise on pig blood vessels. Han, the eager learner, pointed out the variations in blood flow depending on the vessel's type. With patience, Bong guided him through the intricate art of stitching, imparting invaluable knowledge. Han absorbed every detail with unwavering focus. Moving on to acupuncture, Bong introduced Han to a dummy body, explaining the concept of acupuncture points and the significance of the wind point. Han was initially struck by the apparent scarcity of these points and questioned Bong about their number. Then, in a moment of revelation, Han's consciousness expanded, revealing modern acupuncture points, far more abundant than their traditional counterparts. The screen that provided extensive information and detail left Han awestruck. Bong, momentarily skeptical of Han's commitment, questioned his dedication to the study of acupuncture. Han vehemently denied any lack of seriousness. In response, Bong handed him the Book of All Acupuncture Techniques, with instructions to memorize its contents in just 4 days. Han left Bong's residence with the weighty tome in hand, intent on mastering this ancient art. On his way home, Han encountered his second brother, who inquired about his training progress. Han proudly declared that he had completed 10 out of 10 successfully, promising to demonstrate later. He then retreated to his room to immerse himself in the study of acupuncture techniques. During his studies, Han realized the distinctions between present acupuncture and the modern practices he was familiar with. He meticulously documented everything he learned, creating his neurology acupuncture technique. That evening, Han shared a meal with his 2 brothers. However, his first brother expressed displeasure over Han skipping breakfast and lunch. Han explained that he was engrossed in studying acupuncture, but this only fueled his brother's anger. Han's brother had sent him abroad to Seoju to become a civil servant, not a physician, emphasizing their family's duty to serve the emperor with the wisdom of their ancestors. Han, resolute in his ambition, declared his unwavering desire to become a physician, regardless of the consequences, and abruptly left the dinner table. In an attempt to console Han, his second brother suggested they relieve stress through training and assess Han's progress. Han eagerly demonstrated his improved skills by successfully striking all 3 stones, earning his brother's admiration. Encouraged by this display, his brother introduced the 6-stone stabbing technique, emphasizing its value in warding off bandits. They engaged in a friendly sparring match, with Han employing the stabbing technique, but his brother skillfully evaded his attacks. Han, determined to find a vulnerability, sought a blind spot to land his strike, yet his brother remained adept at defending himself. Surprise coursed through Han as his brother continued to block his every move. Realizing Han's significant improvement, his second brother shifted gears, taking their sparring match to a more serious level. The challenge intensified, as Han's relentless pursuit of mastery spurred both of them to push their limits. In their intense sparring match, Han's second brother suddenly surged forward, landing a swift and unexpected strike on Han. The surprise attack took Han off guard, resulting in a small victory for his brother. Despite his loss, the second brother was deeply impressed by Han's remarkable progress. Eager to nurture Han's burgeoning skills further, he proposed additional training sessions. However, Han insisted on taking a well-deserved rest and planned to visit the market the following day. Meanwhile, Bong visited the smith, placing an order for a special item designed for Han's unique needs. The inquisitive smith questioned the purpose of these tools and who might require them. Bong spoke highly of Han, emphasizing his exceptional qualities. With the new day, Han ventured to the bustling market to acquire poisonous weeds. The shop owner sold him the required product, and Han was pleased to find there was ample supply to create anesthesia. Returning to the suburb of Kiao Country, Han revisited the patient with the broken leg. The patient welcomed him warmly, and Han couldn't help but notice that the son had been diligently capturing mice for their experiments. Upon examining the patient's leg, Han made a troubling discovery. It was riddled with pus due to a lack of proper disinfection. Without hesitation, Han retrieved his alcohol and used a cloth soaked in it to cleanse the wound, disinfecting the patient's leg. Although the patient was relieved to see the alcohol, financial constraints prevented him from consuming it. Han took a moment to explain the purpose of the alcohol, emphasizing that it was meant for wound disinfection, not consumption. He playfully teased the patient, suggesting that he could drink the alcohol if he so desired, but warned that it would come at the cost of a future knee amputation. The patient understood the significance of the alcohol and agreed not to drink it. Resuming his experiments with the rats, Han faced a new challenge, persuading the rodents to consume the anesthesia. Unfortunately, the mice exhibited a natural aversion to the poison. Just as Han pondered his next move, the patient's son, Obo, returned. Han shared the details of his father's leg treatment with Obo, who expressed his willingness to collaborate. Han then inquired about a suitable location to conduct his experiments on the rats. Obo guided him to an empty house once occupied by his grandmother and her granddaughters. With the grandmother's passing, the granddaughters had been forced to seek work at the brothel, leaving the house vacant. Han empathized with the difficulties faced by many in the area. As they continued their experiment, it became evident that the rats were reluctant to consume the poison due to their natural instincts. Determined to find a solution, Han and Obo resorted to coaxing the rats with small grains of rice. While the approach initially seemed promising, the rats gradually succumbed to the poison, raising new questions about their experiments and the challenges ahead. Facing the challenge of getting the rats to ingest the anesthesia, Han and Obo adjusted their approach, reducing the amount of rice offered to each rat for testing. However, the process was time-consuming, prompting Han to seek Obo's assistance in continuing the experiment. In appreciation of Obo's help, Han generously offered him 5 coins before departing from the empty house. On his way home, Han was met by his persistent second brother, who tapped him on the shoulder and suggested they continue their training. The two engaged in a spirited spar, with the second brother employing a technique that piqued Han's curiosity, an inner energy called aura. With determination, Han managed to block the attack, impressing his brother. Intrigued by this newfound concept, Han inquired about inner energy and expressed his eagerness to learn. However, his second brother insisted that he continue his training first. Han's progress was remarkable, and he successfully blocked several inner energy attacks within just a few days, an achievement that had taken his brother years to attain. This rapid improvement left the second brother deeply impressed. Following their intense training session, the second brother decided to treat Han to a meal at a restaurant, understanding his need for a break from their rigorous regimen. The pair ordered a sumptuous feast of delicious food and alcohol. Han, adhering to customary Asian tradition, suggested a toast for their first drink. Though the second brother initially appeared unsure, he ultimately joined in the cheer. Their peaceful meal was abruptly disrupted by a commotion, as 2 men in blue and red clothing erupted into a violent brawl. Han's concern grew for the man in red, who seemed to be at a disadvantage against his blue-clad assailant. The red-clothed man eventually lost consciousness, leaving his female companion in distress, crying out for help. Meanwhile, the man in blue made a hasty retreat. Without hesitation, Han rushed to the unconscious man's side, quickly assessing that he had stopped breathing and had no pulse. Drawing upon his medical knowledge, Han immediately began performing CPR, including mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, to revive the fallen man. A gathering crowd watched in astonishment as Han's efforts persisted, and with a final, forceful chest compression, the man suddenly came back to life, taking in a deep breath. Relief washed over the onlookers as they witnessed the miraculous revival. The man, still in awe, wondered aloud how Han had managed to bring him back from the brink of death. The woman explained that the fleeing assailant, Zhong Pan, had seemingly left the man for dead. The man in red, named Sang-duk, expressed his shock at briefly experiencing death and his immense gratitude toward Han for saving his life. Eager to repay his debt, Sang-duk offered Han a silver coin, though Han initially felt it was too much. Soon after, Zhongpan returned with a physician, and a heated argument ensued between him and Sang-duk. As this drama unfolded, Han and his second brother decided to leave and continue their interrupted meal. The woman took a moment to explain to Sang-duk that Han had been the hero behind his miraculous recovery. Touched by Han's selfless act, Sang-duk thanked him once more and bestowed upon him 2 additional silver coins as a token of his appreciation. The inquisitive physician, intrigued by Han's life-saving technique, approached him with curiosity. Han graciously explained that the procedure he had performed was known as cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, a medical intervention designed to revive someone by restoring their heart and lung functions through applied pressure. The amazed physician marveled at Han's ability to independently acquire such a life-saving skill. He eagerly requested Han to teach him CPR and offered to pay any price for this invaluable knowledge. Han, however, declined any payment, instead urging the physician to visit Physician Bong's clinic to further enrich his medical education. With that, Han returned to his meal with his second brother, who beamed with pride at Han's exceptional abilities and toasted to his bright future as a great physician. On the following day, Han revisited the suburban area of Kiao Country to check on the rat he had entrusted to Obo's care. He made his way to Obo's house, where he also inspected Obo's father's leg, finding it to be well disinfected. Obo's father conveyed a message from the rat, revealing that the rodent had consumed 1 grain of rice before succumbing to its effects after approximately 6 hours. Han regarded this outcome as problematic, as it proved to be excessively lethal for the rat. With only 1 rat remaining, Han contemplated his next course of action before departing to the empty house. In due time, Obo returned to the vacant dwelling, bearing a handful of grass. Han, curious about its nature, inquired, and Obo explained that it was cannabis, also known as marijuana. Han recognized that cannabis contained a substantial amount of THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and saw the potential for creating an anesthetic from it. Eager to explore this avenue, Han initiated an experiment by feeding the last rat a dose of marijuana. As expected, the rat slipped into unconsciousness, prompting Han to test its responsiveness by touching and flicking its stomach. The rat continued to breathe steadily, allowing Han to proceed with a delicate surgery on its stomach. With meticulous care, Han successfully completed the sutures. Several hours later, the rat gradually regained consciousness, shooting an irate glare at Han, a clear sign that the experiment had indeed been a success. However, their solitude was interrupted when a young girl entered the house, seeking a physician's aid for her mother. Han readily examined the woman, noting the absence of infection or fever, but observing her extreme thinness and weakness. In a gesture of kindness, Han gave them a silver coin, encouraging them to eat well over the next 2 months. Despite their reluctance to accept it, Han insisted, urging them to nourish themselves properly and promising that they could repay him later. Grateful for his help, they expressed their thanks and bid Han farewell. Upon returning to the empty house, Han voiced his concern, recognizing the limitations of their current way of life. He stressed the importance of independence and self-sufficiency. Obo maintained his belief that hard work and effort would suffice, but Han interjected, acknowledging the need to transform the world without resorting to violence. Obo shared his own aspiration for a better world and expressed his desire to become a skilled physician like Han. Han playfully teased Obo about his seemingly impossible dream, but retained hope that it could come true. He then asked Obo to become his assistant, and after some initial hesitation, Obo ultimately agreed. Intent on taking Obo to the cannabis field, the duo was about to set out when a crowd of people began to gather outside, seeking their medical expertise. Determined to provide medical assistance to every patient, Han and Obo diligently treated each person one by one, working tirelessly until evening. Despite Obo's growing exhaustion, he couldn't help but admire Han's exceptional skills as a physician. In turn, Han remained resolute in his determination to visit the cannabis field despite the late hour. Later that night, inside the opulent home of a wealthy family, a man named In Cho sat sipping his beer while overhearing rumors about a remarkable physician. Initially dismissing it as a jest, In Cho was soon informed by an informant that around 30 people had witnessed the physician's extraordinary abilities. The informant suggested that it would be prudent to ascertain the true identity of this mysterious physician. In Cho, a government official, pondered the possibility that the physician might be an ancient immortal, cleverly disguised as a child. The following day, at Physician Bong's clinic, Han prepared to impart his knowledge to Bong and Siok, focusing on the art of suturing blood vessels and CPR. Both Bong and Siok eagerly anticipated learning from Han and were willing to pay for the valuable education. Han, however, hesitated to accept their money. Suddenly, a military officer barged in, urgently seeking the physician's assistance. He explained that they were engaged in a skirmish against bandits, and many of their soldiers had sustained severe injuries. They required the immediate aid of skilled physicians. Physician Bong and Siok decided to lend their expertise, and Han agreed to join them. The military officer led them to their tent, where they were confronted with a grim scene. Numerous soldiers were severely injured and teetering on the brink of death. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out Lukexpal 305, who commented, "Finally, I found a real person on our Your Talent is Mine video. Thanks for commenting." Among the onlookers, In Cho entered the tent, inquiring if the physicians had arrived. Recognizing Lieutenant Cho, Physician Bong and Seok approached him with formal greetings. Han also extended his respectful greetings to Lieutenant Cho, who couldn't help but be impressed by the youth of this talented physician. Cho had heard of Han's remarkable medical skills and requested him to attend to a wounded soldier. Han promptly examined the soldier's injury. Han identified a deep laceration on the soldier's thigh, which had damaged the rectus femoris muscle but spared the blood vessels. He believed that if they could control the bleeding, it would avert a life-threatening situation. Cho urgently pressed Han to save the soldier immediately, but Han explained that he would tend to him later. Cho's frustration was evident as he questioned Han's decision to delay treatment. Han pointed out that there were other patients with more critical conditions in the tent, provocatively insinuating that Lieutenant Cho was being selective in choosing whom to prioritize. Cho understood Han's perspective and let go of his anger, hoping that Han would save as many lives as possible. Physician Bong and Seok admired Han's unwavering determination, though they couldn't help but wonder if his confrontational manner toward Lieutenant Cho was a reckless move. In response to their comment, Han, incensed, instructed them to promptly attend to the remaining patients. As the battle came to a close, the villagers expressed their gratitude to Lieutenant Cho. However, as Cho was preparing to leave, he began to feel a sharp pain in his foot, realizing that he had unwittingly stepped on a hidden booby trap. Initially considering it a minor wound, Cho assumed it wouldn't pose a significant problem. Back in the tent, all the patients had received treatment, and Physician Bong and Seok were resting after their exhaustive efforts. Suddenly, Han interrupted their respite, instructing them to seek out any patients who might still require medical attention outside. As Cho received treatment from another physician who assured him that the wound wasn't deep and should be fine, Cho couldn't shake his unease. The thought of potential arsenic poisoning from the wound weighed on his mind. Meanwhile, Han grappled with the challenge of tetanus, knowing that antibiotics had not yet been invented in this era. While penicillin could easily resolve the issue, it remained unavailable. Han believed that feeding the patients blue mold could offer a solution. Inside the tent, Han explained to the patients that anyone who had been cut or stabbed by metal might be at risk of metallic poisoning. The patients grew fearful, worried that they might need to undergo amputation. Han reassured them that consuming blue mold could prevent this outcome, but cautioned that it needed to be handled carefully. The safest option, he suggested, was to use molded horse milk. Han instructed them to drink 1 bowl of milk containing blue mold once a day. Concerns about potential stomach aches arose among the patients, prompting Han to sarcastically mention that he could assist them with amputation if they chose not to drink it. Upon hearing about this, Cho entered the tent and asked Han if the remedy was indeed effective against metallic poison. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.